May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. I will not leave you orphaned, Jesus tells us. These are words that we all want, words that we all even need from time to time to hear. Words that speak directly to some of our greatest fears and challenges. Abandonment and isolation, loneliness and vulnerability. They remind us that we're not left to walk this earthly journey without an identity, without direction, that we're not alone. Certainly, we all experience seasons of our lives, moments when transitions and changes and tragedies can leave us feeling like orphans. Whether we speak them out loud doesn't matter. The questions begin to bombard us anyway. What will I do now? Where will I go? What happens next? Who will love me, nurture me, guide me? Who will be on my side? What will become of me? These are all the questions of an orphan. These are the sorts of questions that I imagine are running through the heads and the hearts of the disciples in today's gospel. If you remember the context of the story, it's the Last Supper, and the disciples have been fed, their feet have been washed, the traitor's been identified and has left, and now it's dark, and Jesus announces to his friends that he's leaving. This Jesus for whom they all left behind everything to follow him now says that he is leaving. We do not know where you're going, they protest. How can we know the way? Show us the Father. These are more orphan questions. Anyone who's ever loved and lost, a spouse, a child, a friend, job security, hope, they know these orphans' questions. Anyone who's ever lost everything knows the feeling. Am I all alone? How do I rebuild? How do I move forward? What's next? You see, we all fear being orphaned. It's a fear that points to the deeper reality that on our own, that by ourselves, we're not enough. It's not because we're somehow deficient, though. Rather, it's because we were not created to be self-sufficient. God created humanity to live in community with one another, so we were never intended to stand alone as individuals. We were created to love and to be loved, to live in relationship as persons giving ourselves to each other, to dwell, to abide, to remain within each other, even as the Father is in Jesus and Jesus is in the Father. This is our incarnational life. This is our Trinitarian life. And it's the antithesis of being orphaned. I will not leave you orphaned. This is Jesus' promise to us. Regardless of the circumstances of our lives, storms, death, separation, we never have been, nor will we ever be orphaned by God. How strange that must have sounded to the disciples. In that same conversation, Jesus tells them that he is both leaving and coming. In essence, Jesus is acknowledging that even though we may be apart, he will not leave us. Leaving and coming. Presence and absence. These seeming opposite responses are held in tension, but they're not mutually exclusive. This is what Jesus has set out for us in today's gospel. This tension confronts us with the question of whether Jesus, for us, is a past memory or present reality. A sentimental story that makes us feel good, or a living experience that challenges us and guides and nurtures our lives. And Jesus tells us that the answer to this question is determined by love. Love that is revealed and fulfilled in keeping his commandments. The commandment to love our neighbor as ourselves, to love our enemies, to love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind and strength. We can ask ourselves, whose feet do we wash? And whose feet do we ignore? What are the boundaries of love? The question we should be asking ourselves is, do we keep the commandments? Is our love growing and expanding, and do we allow it to transform our lives and our world? If so, Jesus is probably for us a present reality. And we know the fulfillment of his promise that we're not left orphaned. However, if we're not loving so much, if we remain self-enclosed and isolated, then we relegate ourselves and each other to the orphanages of the world. To be clear, Jesus' promise is still real, and he remains faithful, but we simply have not claimed it. We've not claimed it for ourselves, at least not yet. Keeping these commandments to love, this is our access to Jesus' promise that we will not be left orphaned. Keeping these commandments to love doesn't make Jesus present to us. Rather, it makes us present to the already ongoing reality of Jesus' presence always and everywhere. The commandments to love do not earn us Jesus' love. Instead, they reveal our love for him, a love that originates in his abiding, eternal love and presence within us. Every time we expand the boundaries of our love, we push back the orphanages of this world, creating space within us where the Father and Jesus make their home. I will not leave you orphaned, Jesus says. Over and over again, day after day, regardless of what's happening in our lives, this is Jesus' promise. We have not been abandoned. So let us not abandon ourselves or each other to the orphanages of this world. Let us love with all that we are and with all that we have, even as God the Father and Jesus love us with all that they are and all that they have. Amen.